The scream of twisting metal echoed across the quiet country road as a gleaming red Ferrari spun sideways and slammed into a rusted old pickup truck with enough force to send a battered wooden toolbox flying into the grass. But it wasn't the wreck that made an elderly witness freeze in horror. It was the single weathered envelope that drifted from the truck's cracked dashboard, caught the wind, and landed beneath the Ferrari's shattered front wheel. Inside that envelope rested the final handwritten letter of a mother who had died 20 years earlier. And the woman climbing out of the Ferrari was her daughter, who had spent half her life believing that letter had vanished forever. If you believe kindness can heal broken hearts, forgiveness can change lives, hope should never be abandoned, and second chances deserve to be given, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community. The bright summer sun hung high above rolling fields outside the small town of Ashford as 29-year-old heiress Celeste Hawthorne stepped out of her damaged Ferrari, her designer clothes dusted with shattered glass and her heart pounding with anger. She had inherited Hawthorne Industries only a year earlier after her father's passing, and newspapers loved describing her as brilliant, fearless, and impossible to impress. What they never printed was that beneath her polished confidence lived a woman haunted by unanswered questions about her late mother, Eleanor, who had died when Celeste was only 9 years old. The only thing Celeste had ever wanted more than success was one more conversation with the woman whose face she remembered only through faded photographs. The driver of the old truck climbed out slowly, brushing dirt from his worn denim jacket. His name was Rowan Mercer, a 46-year-old widowed carpenter who lived quietly on the edge of town with his teenage daughter, Ivy. Years of honest labor had bent his back but never his spirit. His truck looked as though it belonged in a scrapyard, with faded paint, mismatched doors, and rust spreading across every panel, yet he maintained its engine with remarkable care because it had belonged to his own father. Hidden inside the cracked dashboard compartment was an envelope he carried everywhere, not because it belonged to him, but because he had promised a dying woman decades ago that he would never stop searching for the little girl meant to receive it. Neither of them noticed the envelope beneath the Ferrari at first. Celeste surveyed the damage with disbelief. Her expensive sports car looked ruined, while Rowan's old truck somehow remained standing despite its crushed bumper. Insurance papers and frustration seemed inevitable until Rowan's eyes suddenly widened. He ignored the twisted metal completely and rushed toward the front tire of the Ferrari, dropping to his knees with trembling hands. His face lost all color. The envelope had survived, its edges were wrinkled, but the elegant handwriting remained visible. "Oh my dearest Celeste," the world seemed to stop turning. Celeste saw her own name written in the unmistakable flowing script she had stared at countless times beneath old family photographs. Her breathing became shallow. She whispered that she knew that handwriting. Rowan carefully picked up the envelope as though lifting something sacred. For years he had imagined this moment, yet now his hands shook so violently that he feared he might tear the paper himself. More than 20 years earlier, Rowan had been a young volunteer repairing storm damage near a children's hospital where Eleanor Hawthorne spent her final weeks battling a rare illness. During those afternoons, Rowan often helped elderly patients, repaired broken benches, and simply listened to lonely families. Eleanor had watched him from a garden bench and eventually trusted him with something she could no longer deliver herself. She explained that powerful relatives intended to control every part of her estate after her death and feared her daughter would never receive the letter she wanted to leave behind. She begged Rowan to find Celeste when she was old enough to understand its contents. Before he could fulfill that promise, the Hawthorne family relocated. Lawyers surrounded every detail of the inheritance, and Rowan lost every trace of the little girl. Year after year he searched quietly whenever life allowed, carrying the letter wherever he traveled because he refused to leave it behind. He often believed he had failed the woman whose final smile still haunted his memory. Celeste stared at him with growing confusion rather than suspicion. There was something painfully sincere in the carpenter's eyes that no performance could imitate. He placed the envelope into her hands without asking for anything in return. She hesitated. The paper felt fragile. The seal had never been broken. For 20 years, nobody had opened it. With trembling fingers she unfolded the yellowed pages. Her mother's words reached across 2 decades with astonishing warmth. Eleanor wrote that if Celeste was reading the letter, then she had become an adult capable of choosing compassion over pride. She confessed that wealth could build companies but never families. She explained that the greatest inheritance she hoped to leave behind was not money but kindness. She also revealed something that shattered everything Celeste believed about her childhood. Eleanor had never willingly abandoned her daughter during her illness. Powerful family members had isolated Celeste, insisting it would spare her emotional pain, while secretly ensuring Eleanor died believing her daughter no longer wished to visit. Every unanswered goodbye had been created by fear, pride, and control. Tears blurred every sentence, years of quiet resentment dissolved beneath the weight of truth. The successful businesswoman who negotiated billion-dollar contracts found herself unable to stand. She sank beside the damaged truck, crying openly in the middle of the roadside while strangers respectfully looked away. Rowan remained silent, but he understood that some moments belonged only to grief. When Celeste finally looked up, she asked the question that had lived inside her heart for 2 decades. She wanted to know why a complete stranger had protected something so precious for so long. Rowan explained everything with gentle honesty. He described Eleanor's courage despite unbearable pain, her endless stories about her daughter, and the promise he had made without ever imagining how difficult keeping it would become. He admitted there had been countless moments when life became so difficult that he considered giving up the search, especially after losing his own wife to illness years later. Yet every time he saw the envelope, he remembered Eleanor's faith that goodness still existed in ordinary people. Celeste realized that the man standing before her had preserved the most valuable possession she would ever own, while expecting absolutely nothing in return. She insisted on paying for the damage to his truck and offering a generous reward. Rowan politely refused the reward that he accepted only enough to repair the vehicle because accepting more would make the promise feel like a business transaction instead of an act of honor. That answer humbled Celeste more than any speech ever could. In the following days, the accident dominated local headlines because reporters recognized the famous Ferrari. They expected another story about lawsuits and expensive settlements. Instead, they discovered something entirely different. Celeste publicly thanked Rowan, describing him as the most honorable man she had ever met. She invited him and Ivy to visit Hawthorne Industries, not as employees or charity recipients, but as honored guests. During that visit, Celeste noticed the extraordinary craftsmanship in Rowan's handmade furniture displayed in the back of his truck. Every table and chair carried remarkable detail shaped by patient hands that valued quality over speed. She learned he struggled to keep his small workshop open because cheap factory furniture had overwhelmed local businesses. Remembering her mother's words about kindness becoming the greatest inheritance, Celeste made an unexpected decision. Rather than simply writing Rowan a large check, she offered him a long-term partnership restoring historic buildings owned by Hawthorne Industries across the region. The contracts would provide steady work for local carpenters and apprentices instead of outsourcing everything to massive corporations. Rowan accepted only after ensuring dozens of other struggling craftsmen would benefit alongside him. Within months, abandoned workshops filled with activity again. Young apprentices learned traditional woodworking from experienced hands. Families who had considered leaving town found reasons to stay. The ripple effect spread far beyond one accident. Meanwhile, Celeste quietly began examining old family records uncovered after reading her mother's letter. She discovered documents proving that several relatives had manipulated both Eleanor's final wishes and parts of the estate. Rather than pursuing revenge, Celeste chose transparency. She donated a significant portion of recovered assets to hospitals supporting families facing terminal illness, ensuring children would never again be separated from dying parents because of pride, influence, or greed. The dedication ceremony took place on a warm autumn afternoon beneath brilliant blue skies. Rowan stood beside Ivy while children laughed in nearby gardens built outside the family care center funded by Eleanor's memory. A bronze plaque carried only a simple sentence taken from Eleanor's letter: "Kindness is the only inheritance that grows richer when shared." Visitors often paused to read it. Many walked away wiping tears from their eyes. Celeste no longer measured success by magazine covers or quarterly profits. She found herself visiting the center regularly, speaking with families facing impossible days, offering comfort she once desperately needed herself. Every visit reminded her that healing rarely arrived through grand miracles. Sometimes it arrived inside an old envelope carried for decades by someone the world barely noticed. Rowan returned each evening to his modest home with grease beneath his fingernails and peace inside his heart. The promise he had carried for 20 years had finally reached its destination. His daughter watched him smile more often than she ever remembered, knowing that integrity had accomplished something money never could. The damaged Ferrari was eventually repaired, the rusty truck received a new bumper but kept its faded paint. Rowan refused to restore its weathered appearance completely because every scratch reminded him that appearances often hid extraordinary stories. People passing those vehicles would never guess that one collision had reunited a daughter with her mother's final words, healed decades of hidden grief, restored an entire community of craftsmen, and transformed an heiress's understanding of what true wealth really meant. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you believe one act of honesty can change someone's entire life, or tell us about a moment when kindness unexpectedly found you. As the seasons continued changing beneath bright afternoon skies, Celeste often carried her mother's letter wherever she traveled, carefully protected inside a leather case. She no longer feared losing it because its greatest message no longer lived on paper. It lived in every compassionate decision she made, every family she helped, every opportunity she created, and every life touched by the promise a humble carpenter had refused to break. Rowan never considered himself a hero. He believed he had simply kept his word. Yet that simple promise became the bridge between sorrow and healing, between loneliness and belonging, and between a mother's final hope and a daughter's lifelong search for peace. Sometimes destiny does not arrive through perfect plans. Sometimes it crashes into your life disguised as twisted metal, broken glass, and an old rusty truck carrying the most priceless treasure in the world. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that kindness costs little, promises matter, forgiveness sets hearts free, and the greatest treasures are often hidden inside the people the world overlooks.